As strange as it may seem, this modest building at the top of Mount Stromlo was the first piece of genuinely national infrastructure of the new Commonwealth of Australia's fledgling national capital. The debate surrounding the building's construction lasted for well over 2 years, 1909 to 1911, a century ago, and it forced the federal politicians based in Melbourne to start thinking with the nation's future firmly in mind. They were dragooned into thinking big. Still in great working order before being engulfed in the 2003 fires, the remaining shell, this poignant skeleton, contains within its charred walls such a marvellous story. It's an international story, one that links Peter Lalor and his Eureka stockaders with bustling, gold-rich Ballarat, marvellous and moneyed Melbourne, Dublin, London, and even post-Renaissance Florence. The many layers of our story spiral outwards from a central point, from just one man in fact, James H. Oddie, the Lancashire-born son of an innkeeper, a typical product of his era because of his dedication to the notion of self-improvement, bettering oneself and, in turn, bettering one's community. Growing up in Manchester, Oddie was radicalised by the widespread Chartist protests that demanded better working conditions. The long labour struggle in Britain, the sheer number of debilitating violent strikes, eventually prompted Oddie, looking for a better life for he and his young wife, to respond to an advertisement in an English newspaper encouraging assisted migration to the sunny set of colonies in the south. Arriving in Geelong in June 1849, the couple moved in 1851 to Golden Point, Ballarat, where Oddie was elected as a diggers' representative to protest against the burden of mining licences. Rejecting the hardships of the mining life, Oddie established a store near Eureka, where two things happened. First, proximity and cultural background made him unashamedly a supporter of the coming Eureka stockade and its leader, Oddie's friend, Peter Lalor. And secondly, as a small businessman on the cusp of becoming a big businessman, Oddie knew how to make serious money in a frontier town, and plenty of it, as a shopkeeper come real estate agent, money lender, and eventually highly successful banker. By the 1880s, one of the whole Goldfields district's most affluent citizens, Oddie, a committed Methodist follower of John Wesley his entire life, set about using his money for the public good. The inaugural chairman of the Ballarat Municipal Council, in an elegant town quickly becoming an advertisement for Australia itself, Oddie financially supported numerous charitable causes, such as the Ballarat Hospital and Children's Ward, the Benevolent Asylum, the Orphanage, and a female refuge. But his prodigious wealth also enabled him to indulge his hobbies and preoccupations. At the forefront of these was a love of astronomy. James Oddie was a stargazer, a passionate stargazer. After playing the leading role in the establishment of the Ballarat Observatory on Mount Pleasant in Ballarat, Australia's first municipal observatory, and grieving the death of his second wife, Oddie travelled to Europe and Great Britain, where he resided for about 3 years, 1886 to 1889. While overseas, Oddie purchased from the elite Sir Howard Grubb Company a 9-inch diameter refracting telescope, and later 12-inch and 26-inch reflecting telescopes and an 8-inch refractor. Shortly after his return to Australia, the country plunged into an economic depression so severe that the social fabric of all 6 colonies, in particular Oddie's Victoria, was rocked to the core. In true Dickensian boom and bust fashion, many fortunes were lost. One of them was James Oddie's. Typically, the irrepressible Oddie, not stony broke, but none too flash either, turned his attention towards the great issue of the later 1890s. Federation. With Victoria, stimulated by the charismatic leadership of Alfred Deakin, pursuing a nationalist agenda and Ballarat playing its part to the fullest, James Oddie took it upon himself to ask not what his country could do for him, but what he could do for his country. In 1909, well into his 80s, prickly and unpredictable, older but wiser, poorer but a proud new Australian citizen, Oddie offered to the Commonwealth Government of Prime Minister Alfred Deakin, by then the federal member for Ballarat, one 9-inch refractor telescope, one filar micrometer, a clock, and timber for an 18-foot dome to house the whole package. Deakin wrote back to his constituent accepting the generous offer and acknowledging what he called Oddie's splendid gift. In March 1910, in preparation for the possibility of the Oddie telescope's arrival, the Victorian and Commonwealth astronomer, Florence-born Pietro Barraclough, and the Commonwealth's principal surveyor, Charlie Scrivener, tasked with determining the best possible location for the telescope in the Yass-Canberra region, well away from the glare of city lights, went about their professional business. Stromlo, history records, got the nod for several reasons: its high altitude, a dust-free environment, air clarity, and reliability of atmosphere. This was an ideal spot from which to view the heavens. James Oddie died on the 3rd of March 1911, sadly unaware, it seems, that the federal government authorities had confirmed that his superb telescope, about to take its distinctive place in the new national capital, would be called the Oddie Telescope. In the same month of March, the road to Mount Strom's rough and stony summit, as it was referred to, was completed. Work on the structure immediately commenced, the builders adhering to a set of superb plans approved by Barraclough, the originals of which were a disastrous casualty of the 2003 fires. Thankfully, we do have quality copies available which reflect the splendour of the original documents. The Oddie House, this house, was completed in September 1911 at a cost of £630. The telescope, right here, the telescope was completed late the following month, only after Barraclough had done some last-minute adjustments. Over the next 18 months, Barraclough and his talented assistant, Dr James Baldwin, would travel from their Melbourne observatory to pristine Mount Strom, 15 times to make test observations of the sun, to assess visibility of the moon's surface, and to plot deep space objects with glorious names such as Alpha and Omega Centauri, Eta Carina, and the Magellanic Clouds. They soon defined the prime meridian of Australia, the crucial reference point of Australia's lines of longitude. This was national infrastructure indeed. On their numerous visits to Canberra, Pietro Barraclough, the boss, he slipped in the North Room. Assistant Baldwin, he was in the West Room, in a building, and take my word for it, where every room had a view. Robert McGill, the caretaker, he was in the South Room, and the Piece de Resistance, the East Room. That doubled as the photographic room and the dining room. From such humble roots, big Commonwealth projects blossomed. And for that, we have to thank the grand old man of Ballarat. In the last 20 years of his life, Oddie made sure that his beloved hometown suitably recognised Peter Lalor with a statue in the main street. He recovered and donated to the Ballarat Art Gallery that he helped to establish the precious Eureka flag so treasured by the nation today. And he made certain in his will that the Eureka diggers' graves would forever be provided for. There's no doubt James Oddie was a special Australian. He looked to the stars. But fortunately for the Australian nation, late in his eventful life, he included the national capital of Australia in the view.